All right, I am back with the second video. That first live is only about the quarterbacks. I had to go take care of some stuff really quick. Something popped up here. So that's all taken care of. If you want the 49ers roster breakdown here ahead of the Cardinals game for the quarterback position, where I break down Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo, 49ers short term, long term thinking, check out the other video. Make sure to notifications for all of these. For this one, we're going to talk about the whole rest of the roster, and that means that we start with the running back position. So our friends on Twitter are going to join us as well, but you have the roster right up here behind me, and I'll make it a little bit bigger. So we just talked about Garoppolo and Lance. I mean, the summary of that is Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be the starter if he's healthy enough to be the starter. That's that. That's just how the 49ers are approaching this. They haven't punted the season away yet, and Trey Lance still has a lot to develop. And there were some promising things, and there were some really, this is a work in progress. But that was expected things for the 49ers at the quarterback position in the second half against the Seahawks. So without further ado, let's talk about some of the stuff that we're a little bit more sure about. Running back room. This, I think, will be the return of Elijah Mitchell. There was a sign today that will be the case for the 49ers because they cut Kerryon Johnson off of the practice squad. Remember Kerryon Johnson, that he might still be having some knee issues, and that's too bad because he was a second-round pick for the Lions back in 2018. 49ers called him up from the practice squad for the game against Green Bay. He never ended up playing, and now he's not even on the practice squad anymore. But it is a good sign that Elijah Mitchell, who's playing through some pain or practicing through some pain right now, and who might play through some pain with his shoulder injury, he might be back up for the 49ers against Arizona. And boy, it would be nice for the 49ers if they did have Elijah Mitchell. I'll tell you what, I thought that Trey Sermon looked good against the Seahawks. I think that he's made progress over his 2 weeks back, first against the Packers and then against Seattle. Sermon is built like and has the instincts of a dependable NFL back, especially if the 49ers are running inside zone and some of their occasional gap scheme stuff. He can run the occasional outside zone play too. 4-3 speed is not absolutely necessary. Let's establish that right now. I mean, one of the first Shanahan success stories, the Kyle Shanahan success stories, was Alfred Morris. Alfred Morris wasn't a 4-3 guy. He's like a 4-6 guy. Trey Sermon, I think officially a 4-6 guy, but he's got a little bit of a burst. So maybe, in that 10-yard range, he could run more like a 4-5 guy, but nobody is going to confuse him for a Marquise Goodwin or for Raheem Mostert or even for an Elijah Mitchell, all of whom are really, really fast football players. But Sermon is a little bit bigger built. To me, coming out of Ohio State, you just scream professional back, a guy that can handle a load, a guy that could run a variety of different schemes, a guy who could be relied on to take, that tenderizer role of Shanahan's backfield. So Sermon at 87 yards against the Seahawks wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination, a little bit above replacement level if you look at the advanced statistics. But where this really starts to get fun for the 49ers is when you pair Sermon, who's more like your thunder, with somebody like Elijah Mitchell, who is your lightning. Obviously, Raheem Mostert was supposed to be the lightning for the 49ers. That was, their overarching plan. And Mostert, they had a dedicated section of the playbook just because he was so damn fast. And even though Elijah Mitchell might be a 4-3 guy, I think that makes Raheem Mostert a 4-2 guy. And they don't have him anymore. And that undeniably affects the playbook. So the 49ers can't run that 4-2 Raheem Mostert stuff. But I'll tell you what, I think the running game is going to get a lot better when Elijah Mitchell and Trey Sermon are paired together. Now, the issue with Mitchell is that he was in so much pain that he just couldn't play. Kyle Shanahan said, it would be impressive if he could play against Seattle, but it'd be a pain management thing. I think the 49ers feel a lot better about that Mitchell shoulder injury now with a week more under their belts against Arizona. And hey, if Jimmy Garoppolo can't play, you better hope that you have Mitchell and Sermon to spearhead a good backfield. Now, they have a third guy, Jacques Patrick, and I thought one of the worst decisions of the game against Seattle on Sunday was Kyle Shanahan asking a running back who hasn't been around for more than a week and a half, and Jacques Patrick, to throw a dangerous crossfield backwards pass to Jimmy Garoppolo, of all people, on a trick play when the 49ers were already moving the ball at will against the Seahawks. That really stunted the 49ers. They wanted the pass interference flag. They didn't get it. Kyle Shanahan needs to stop being so cute, and he needs to realize when stuff is rolling, stay with it. It was against a bad Seattle defense, and the 49ers really played themselves off the rails there in the first half. But Jacques Patrick, he had a couple of decent runs of the 49ers. He's a bigger body. He can take on some of that load until Jeff Wilson comes back, possibly late this month. Maybe it won't be until November. But the 49ers, there are brighter times on the horizon, provided they can maintain a decent level of health in this running back room. The pending return of Elijah Mitchell will help them a lot. Trey Sermon is getting better, and then you hope that Jacques Patrick can hold down the fort until Jeff Wilson can come and take over the whole room, because Wilson gives you explosiveness and he gives you power, and you really have to like that. You also have to like that Kyle Juszczyk has been so productive for the 49ers over the past couple of weeks. Obviously, career high in touches against Green Bay, so that was good for him. Okay, all right, the receiving room, make this bigger again. Deebo Samuel is leading the NFL in essentially every single receiver category. Yards, he's the only guy on pace for over 2,000 yards. The more advanced ones, yards per route run. The one that really stands out to me for Deebo Samuel is yards after the catch per reception and expected yards after the catch per reception, the difference between those two. Now, obviously, you can measure yards after the catch per reception in a very standard way. A guy catches it at the 10, he faces contact at the 11, but makes it all the way to the 16. That's 5 yards after the catch. But expected yards after the catch of the reception is a little bit more complicated. And NFL Next Gen Stats tracks this based on the radar data. They have chips in every player's pads, and they're able to see, based on speed and tackler distance, how far any given receiver is making it past contact over expectation. Deebo Samuel led the entire NFL with over 4 yards over expectation after contact in 2020, and he's number 2 this year with an even better figure like 4.3. Think about that. On average, Deebo Samuel gets 4 more yards after initial contact than your baseline NFL receiver. And that is because he is a grown man. What's great about this with Deebo Samuel is that he came into camp having lost weight this year. He was in better shape than in 2020. The 49ers called him Skinny Deebo for a reason. That was his nickname around the team facility. Yet he is still plowing through guys on the field. You saw on the touchdown pass from Trey Lance there at the end of the game, he's still forcing his way through 3 or 4 defenders to get to a certain spot. He still is essentially impossible to knock down at first contact. And he's still, just running like a gigantic, pillar of iron through defenses, even at a lighter and faster weight. That's all here. That is all mentality. That's what you have to love about Deebo Samuel. He's in the right headspace this season. And you could talk all you want about Kyle Shanahan not properly motivating certain guys, not getting the most out of certain talents. Right now, he's getting the most out of Deebo Samuel. And this is the year after Deebo was, dealing with a lot of injuries, didn't quite get himself in the top physical condition because he broke his foot in the offseason. So the 49ers have figured out the key to cracking the Deebo Samuel code, and he's doing a great job for him right now. So that is the receiver room, and I think that if you get a compliment to Deebo Samuel, obviously Brandon Ayuk has shown signs of life, but he hasn't been the guy that we've seen in 2020 yet. Obviously, Mohamed Sanu has been a number 3 receiver. We saw more of Trent Sherfield early. We saw Juwan Jennings against the Eagles. You just need that at least one receiver compliment to Deebo Samuel, and things will become much more productive for the 49ers. I mean, as of right now, the offense is moving the ball, but it's not punching it in, right? It's not finishing in some of those critical scenarios, especially in the first half against Seattle. And that's where I think that, we saw Ayuk score against the Green Bay Packers. That was a big touchdown in the third quarter in the red zone. He converted a third down right before that. You need that complementary weapon. So the 49ers need Ayuk to take this up to the next level. And he's certainly going to get those opportunities because Deebo Samuel is going to draw a lot of defensive attention. Whenever you're on pace for over 2,000 receiving yards a quarter of the way through the season, defenses are going to pay attention to you. So Brandon Ayuk's time to shine is now. He's got to get it done. This is the 49ers need that. And another reason they need it is because George Kittle, as we move on to the tight end room, is beaten up. And I don't know if that was part of the logic and the thought process behind the 49ers adding Jordan Matthews back to their practice squad. But Jordan Matthews is back. And George Kittle, who's dealing with that calf injury and who's taken a ton of bruises throughout the course of these games, the 49ers have relied on him in a big way over the past several years to be really their number one target. Well, now Deebo Samuel obviously is carrying the lion's share of that load, but George Kittle is still bruising his way out there to yards after the catch. Whenever he touches the ball, it seems like it's a violent play. And it would just sure be nice for the 49ers to be able to even out the middle of the field distribution between more than just Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. Those guys both run with such a physical bruising style that you need the other guys other weapons to really take some of that burden off of them to make this more sustainable for the 49ers, to make this more efficient for the 49ers, and to make this more explosive for them. We saw Ross Dwelley with that touchdown. That was great body positioning on the throw from that came in from Jimmy Garoppolo, but the way that Dwelley shielded that defensive back over there on the far side of the field was impressive. And that was a great example of the 49ers adding complementary production. Interestingly enough, they have set an NFL modern era record by having 12 different players score their 12 touchdowns so far. And George Kittle, believe it or not, is not one of them. So for as much as the 49ers need somebody like Brandon Ayuk to do more in the middle of the field, Trent Sherfield to do more in the middle of the field, maybe even Mohamed Sanu to grab a few more catches, they're getting contributions from everybody near the red zone, which I find to be ironic. So Dwelley got the job done in the red zone, but I would love to see Ross Dwelley catch a few more passes, Charlie Werner catch a few more passes. I mean, there was that play where I think it was Werner and Ayuk, or was it Samuel downfield? They were essentially playing DB against each other. It was Jimmy Garoppolo's nicest escape of the day from the pocket, but the 49ers were unable to complete the play downfield. So it's going to be really important for the 49ers to balance out the offensive production throughout the entirety of their drives, because this is a team that does drive the ball sometimes 10, 11, 12, 13 plays. So you can't have Deebo Samuel having 7 or 8 touches per those drives, or else he's not going to last you the course of the season. The same with George Kittle. It is all about balancing out the workload for the 49ers. All right. Down to the offensive line. I've been talking a lot. I need some water. I wish I could figure out how to more easily turn off the camera here on StreamYard so I could just leave you guys with the roster and go get some water. Maybe if I do this, hold on. Oh yeah, that works. Cool. So I can't stop it. And I might go get some water when it's time to take a little bit of a break for defense. But first, we're going to go through the 49ers offensive line. So you have Trent Williams, injury question mark. Team dodged a bullet when they found out that it wasn't a more serious situation than a day-to-day one. There's some fluid that's built up in Trent Williams' shoulder, but the 49ers do hope that he's going to be ready for Sunday. That'd be huge because he's been one of the NFL's best players so far this year. Living up to the contract, leading the offensive line. Niners need that. Laken Tomlinson, I think, has been solid so far this year. Although I will say that Jordan Brooks blitz that really detonated the 49ers momentum in the first half. That blitz from the linebacker inside for Seattle, it just knifed through, nailed Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that was Laken Tomlinson's responsibility, but I don't want to pin it exactly on him yet. It might have been Garoppolo's fault. Sometimes it's the quarterback that has to identify that. It might have been Alex Mack's fault because the center sets the protections. But boy, that one hurt the 49ers, and that came right against the gap where Laken Tomlinson was standing. So I'm not so sure. Alex Mack, it's been a mixed bag. I thought that throughout weeks 1 and 2, the veteran presence of Alex Mack really helped the 49ers get the job done in road environments up front, especially in a particularly hostile one in Philadelphia. Mack wasn't good against the Packers. He showed his age against the Packers. The line was better against the Seattle Seahawks. So I don't. That game was a disjointed game because of the quarterback injury, because the 49ers had to flip on a fly. They did allow some interior pressure. That sack to Jordan Brooks was tough. I'm going to find out this week who exactly was at fault there, whether it be Tomlinson or Mack. But the 49ers need to make sure they get more of the young version of Alex Mack than the version that they saw in week 3. Daniel Brunskill is good to allow a couple pressures per game. I mean, that definitely is the weak link of the 49ers offensive line. And you know what? I think that Mike McGlinchey has improved in pass blocking. He's a middle tier pass blocker now. He's not at the bottom tier of the league after adding some of that weight. I think, he is playing more like a veteran for the 49ers and definitely hasn't been a massive weak link on the offensive line as he was throughout parts of last season. We can criticize the 49ers until our face turns blue about picking Aaron Banks in the second round. And obviously that doesn't look good right now, but so far they haven't had to use him. So far the starting 5 have held up reasonably well. And it's going to be about churning out rushing production, even with a shorthanded backfield, and continuing to protect the quarterback position. And a lot of that does come down to the quarterback and the 49ers. I'm not saying they've done a poor job. I think they've done a better job in pass protection from quarterback through the line of scrimmage to, coordinating everything. But I think they have to maintain that. And obviously they're going to have to stay good on the ground as far as blocking goes. And that's going to be tougher without a Raheem Mostert. But these 5, I think, have done fine, with still more room for improvement, as I just outlined there. With Aaron Banks, I asked Shanahan about him last Friday, and he said that the injury for Aaron Banks during the preseason slowed down the process of Aaron Banks acclimating and getting in shape. And that was really interesting to me because Aaron Banks was a huge guy coming out of college. He weighed 338 pounds at the Senior Bowl. Everybody was wondering why the 49ers picked such a large guard, given the fact that they traditionally operated with smaller linemen in their zone-based scheme. It seemed like a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. So it makes sense, at that level, that Kyle Shanahan would insinuate that the biggest issue for Aaron Banks has been getting in shape to be able to do some of the stuff that the 49ers ask to do from their guards from an athletic standpoint. Shanahan also compared Aaron Banks' transition and development to the transition that Laken Tomlinson had to face when he came over from Detroit way back at the start of the Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch regime. So if Laken Tomlinson had to evolve from a power guard into a more nimble, and he's still powerful, obviously. I mean, Laken is built like a tank, but into a more nimble zone-based guard, that was something that took a while for the 49ers to really hone in with comfortability at, right? That was something that really took a while to establish rhythm at. I would say it took them a season until 2019 when that running game started to click on all cylinders, and that's when Laken Tomlinson was an efficient part of it. So maybe the hope is that even though Aaron Banks has come in and disappointed by not being a plug and play addition, maybe the hope is that he develops into that kind of mover for the 49ers offensive line by year 2. If that's the case, you better hope that Dan Brunskill and you better hope that the rest of this offensive line stay healthy and that Brunskill does hold down the fort, because it's going to be needed. The 49ers, thankfully, on the one play that Alex Mack missed with his hand injury, had Jake Brendel step in at center, and they had Jalen Moore step in for Trent Williams at left tackle. But you got to have the starting 5 healthy. I don't like the 49ers' depth up front. So far, I mean, knock on wood, nobody cheers for injuries. The 49ers, I think, did they have dodged the bullet of not having enough immediate offensive line depth. So you knock on wood, hope they could stay there. I need to get some water, so I'm going to keep this video going, and I'll be right back after I get some water, and we'll talk about defense on the other side. All right, who's ready to talk about the defense? I have my water now, so I'm going to be a lot happier about this. Sometimes it's hard to talk for a long time without any water, as I found out when that coughing spell started. So, 49ers defense, boy, were they impressive for those first 5 drives. Again, let's recap. Negative 12 Seattle yards, 0 first downs, 5 consecutive 3-and-outs. And this was the top first half offense in football entering that game. Nobody had stopped the Seahawks throughout the first 3 games before halftime. Obviously, this was inverted in the 49ers matchup with Seattle, as Seattle got all their production, or essentially all of it, after the break. But I don't blame that at all on the 49ers defense. I thought that they played as well as they could have, and the fact that they suffocated Seattle throughout those first 5 drives should have been enough to power the 49ers to a commanding lead and eventually a win. Obviously, that didn't happen, but come on, when you hold Russell Wilson to negative 12 yards in 5 drives, you need to lead by more than 7-0 after that stretch. There's a lot of people to blame for that, and they're all on either the offensive side of the ball or on the special team side of the ball. Robbie Gould straining his groin obviously hurt the 49ers because the offense did get the 49ers in position to make it 10-0, but Mitch Wishnowsky couldn't hit the 41-yard field goal, so it stayed 7-0. I think even a 10-0 lead would have put the 49ers defense in position to sustain their excellence for a longer period of time. 2 possession leads are big for defenses. 1 possession leads, I mean, you're having to expend a ton of energy to do what the 49ers did over those first 5 drives. And obviously you saw the result. They ran out of gas. So special teams is at fault. I thought Jimmy Garoppolo started, missing throws. He was a touch late after the first drive. And, it could have been the calf contusion. I don't know, but he wasn't getting the job done at that same efficient level post drive 1. And there was just a general downstream malaise that overtook the 49ers offense all the way to the point where they hit halftime. Garoppolo has to take himself out of the game, and then they were really, really limited in the second half. But when Garoppolo was in rhythm in that first half, the defense could feed right off of that. Complementary football, right? So 6 of 6 first drive. That was great. I think the second drive featured the interception. But that third drive, Garoppolo right back in rhythm, and that ended with the missed field goal. And ultimately, the dam will rupture. The defense can't keep it up forever. We've seen this happen time and time again for the 49ers ever since they've really risen to defensive prominence in 2019. So that it's all about game flow. It's all about complementary football. That's why you hear that term so often. The 49ers need to make sure different phases of their operation support each other, and the defense didn't get that necessary support from the offense. Defensive line in specific, Nick Bosa. God, that guy, he's getting double teamed more than almost any other edge rusher in all football, yet he's still near that upper tier productivity as far as pass rush win rate goes. There's a great graph today that showed just how often Bosa's been double teamed. For that reason, it's really important for Eric Armstead to do what he's doing. And Armstead is winning a lot. Armstead is pushing the pocket. Armstead is taking pressure off of Nick Bosa. But we do know that this is a collective unit effort. And if the 49ers want to be at the level of dominance that they showed through so much of 2019 and they showed through the first 5 drives of that game against Seattle, they need more than just 2 guys pushing the pocket. And that is where Dee Ford and his performance over just 13 snaps came in. He came in on those very high leverage snaps, passing situations for Seattle, and Ford notched 2 sacks. Javon Kinlaw, to me right here, boy, did he look impressive. And I'm going to change around the depth chart here in just a second. I know it's confusing, but I have this really divided up into 3 tech and 1 tech. So I need to have DJ Jones as the nose tackle on that first string. But Javon Kinlaw blasted off of the ball on that first Seattle third down. It was like he was a really big-ass sprinter coming out of the starting blocks. And it was his birthday, so maybe he had a little extra pep in his step. But Kinlaw really got after Wilson in person. That was impressive. And he helped Dee Ford clean up that second sack. And I said, it looks like Javon Kinlaw is having a really fun birthday party. I was like Seattle's fourth or fifth drive at that point. And the 49ers were ragdolling Russell Wilson there. Everybody seemed to be getting off the ball. The defensive line went into that 2019 mode. If there was, a disappointment, for me, you have to say it's Sansom Ebicom. I mean, he's a guy the 49ers are paying $6 million a year. That's no small chunk of change. And he really hasn't been productive as a pass rusher. He had the pressure at the end of the game against Detroit that helped seal the win. We give Sansom Ebicom credit there, but the 49ers need a little bit more from him so that their Bravo defensive line unit, you have the Alphas, the Bravos, and the Turbos. You have Alpha and Bravo are the two main designations you have to remember. Alpha is going to be your base package. Bravo is going to be your base package, but with second string guys that you need to play because you want to keep your defensive line fresh. That Bravo unit, especially against Green Bay, really underperformed. And it's going to be an issue as the season wears on if Sansom Ebicom can't get the job done for the 49ers at least a semi-efficient level. Right now, Ford is productive. Bosa's productive. Armstead's productive. I like what DJ Jones is doing. He's productive. I thought that this was Kinlaw's best pass rushing game of his career, in 1+ seasons of his career against Seattle. But you need all 8 in that rotation to do a good job, or 9 or however many you have. Speaking of that, Maurice Hurst made an impact in his first game, his 49ers debut. Hurst is I don't want to say he's a fire hydrant because DJ Jones is like a very mobile fire hydrant. He can move for his size and he can really anchor in there. Javon Kinlaw is a fire hydrant who can move as well. I mean, that's why he's picked in the first round. Hurst is a little smaller, not as much of a fire hydrant, but boy, he knows the technique to play the run. And it was no coincidence the 49ers were much sturdier against the run, especially in that first half, than they were against Green Bay. Green Bay was consistently moving them. Green Bay was consistently churning the ball downfield. And I give Maurice Hurst a lot of credit. I think he's a veteran-savvy presence in there that helps the line establish the mentality, and so much of it is in between the ears. So much of it is up here. Helps that line establish that rigid mentality against the run. So I was really impressed with the 49ers defensive line. I thought that was a huge step in the right direction. We'll see how it continues. I think Maurice Hurst is going to get, another week with more of the share than a guy like Zach Kerr, who hasn't been all too good for the 49ers. Definitely not as good as he was against Carolina last year. And in just a few weeks, the 49ers are going to get Jordan Willis back off of the suspended list. So that's going to be a nice little boost for them. And by that point, they're probably going to need him because you never know where the injuries and all this and all that's going to happen. But if the 49ers can build off of that performance against Seattle, they'll be very happy with where their defensive line is against Arizona. And I think D. Ford mentioned on KMBR on today, a little bit earlier, that Kyler Murray looks good, but the dynamic shifts as soon as quarterbacks start getting hit. The 49ers have hit Kyler Murray a little bit before. In 2019, they were able to do it. And, he was able to get up and make some plays against them. But especially that first meeting of 2019, 49ers established a solid first half lead by virtue of the fact that they were able to harass Kyler Murray early. And this defensive line is going to have to be disciplined, and it's going to have to be powerful, and it's going to have to build upon a good performance against Seattle to handle what might even be a tougher challenge against Arizona. You know who's going to have to be better? The 49ers linebackers. These guys have disappointed so far this year. In fact, the only player at the position group that has really, truly impressed me is Azeez Al-Shaair. Azeez Al-Shaair, because Dre Greenlaw's out, is now that 49ers weak side linebacker. So the 49ers have asked him to do a lot, and he's flying around. I thought he did a good job against the run. I thought he was, fitting his gaps correctly against the Seahawks, and he's done some okay stuff in coverage. I mean, it's obviously still more of a liability, but just in the open field, Al-Shaair can move, and he's showing us why he had all those tackles in college at Florida Atlantic. But Fred Warner has yet to make a game-changing play, and the 49ers are paying Fred Warner to make game-changing plays. Obviously, throughout the first 3 weeks, Fred Warner and the linebackers weren't great against the run. I mean, it might have been Dre Greenlaw's mistakes in week one that caused those big Detroit runs. But still, Fred Warner has to get the 49ers on a better anti-run page. And Fred Warner has got to start making game-changing plays. The 49ers have only one takeaway so far this year. They are tied with the Jaguars for the least in the league. And nobody wants to be tied with Jacksonville or be similar to Jacksonville in anything right now. The 49ers have struggled to generate takeaways in every single season except for 2019. 2020, after Bosa and Ford went down, it was bad. 2018, it was historically bad. That's why the 49ers went out and got D Ford and Nick Bosa. 2017, very mediocre as far as the takeaways go. The difference between 2021 and those other years, not named 2019, is the 49ers actually have a good, powerful pass rush this year. So it's surprising, yes, that they only have one takeaway, but maybe part of it is bad luck and the fact that they played Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, two of the great ball protectors in the league over the past 2 weeks. No more Rodgers on the schedule. Wilson's only there once. Kyler Murray's definitely known to throw more picks and make more mistakes than either the previous two guys. Maybe this is the week that the 49ers defense starts generating some takeaways, especially if Jimmy Garoppolo is not available. They're going to have to start doing that. The 49ers are going to need plus production from their defense, not just, drive stoppages. They're going to need drives to be turned on their head. They're going to need a defense to help contribute to that point scoring moving in the other direction. And that, my friends, I believe starts with Fred Warner. He's being paid like a game changer. He needs to start delivering like a game changer for the 49ers. On to the secondary. These guys were surprisingly good to the opinions of many. Like compared to what the expectations were against DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, I think you have to be happy, especially with Emmanuel Moseley. I think he's averaging he's allowing a 66 rating into his coverage. Mosley's been good, has allowed only a 46% completion rate. Right now I have Josh Norman as the starter, but he's been out, and he'll probably be out again this week, according to his Instagram page. So you're seeing the 49ers play Drake Kirkpatrick on the other side. Maybe it could swap him with Dante Johnson on this depth chart. Obviously, the team isn't getting anything out of Ambry Thomas. That's a discussion for another time. Rookie, whether the year off in 2020 due to opting out has hurt him or not, it probably has. It's something the 49ers can't count on right now. So you've seen them really focus on the veterans here. And this is a change I should make. Lenoir currently is not their starting nickelback. With K'Wan Williams on injured reserve, the 49ers have put Dante Johnson, and we're going to paste special Dante Johnson here, into that starting nickelback spot. So Diamador Lenoir is now one of your backup cornerbacks for the 49ers. I'll put Drake Kirkpatrick behind Josh Norman and Diamador Lenoir behind Emmanuel Moseley. So that's what your updated 49ers cornerback depth chart looks like. With Norman out still with the bruised lungs, it's Kirkpatrick, Moseley, and Dante Johnson as your top three, with Diamador Lenoir being Mosley's backup at cornerback and everything going along those lines. So I thought that the 49ers secondary was impressive. I thought that, that one pass interference call to against Drake Kirkpatrick really obviously hurt, but that was after the D Ford offsides penalty. Was it a little ticky-tack? Maybe. The 49ers lead the league with 8 pass interference penalties so far this year. It's something they definitely need to cut down on. But there was only that one against Seattle, and that's obviously one that fans are going to look at. But in the large scheme of things, you had Emmanuel Moseley making plays against DK Metcalf, which was an opposite of last year, week 8, right? 2020 week 8, when it was DK Metcalf owning the 49ers. You had Russian coverage working in tandem. You had Drake Kirkpatrick logging a tackle for loss. He didn't look raw at all. Penalties have been an issue. DPIs have been an issue for him. But in the overarching aggregate, look at things against the Seahawks on Sunday, the 49ers had a workable secondary. And I think they got there by trusting veterans, which is why Deommodore Lenoir has lowered on the pecking order. They needed Lenoir to start the season for them, and that was okay against the Lions. They still believe in him. They're still excited about him in the future. But on a rush over coverage team, and everybody was freaking out about the cornerback position, not that long ago, and it was a lot better against the Seahawks. But on a rush over coverage team, you rely on that pass rush, and then you count on veterans to not make huge glaring errors on the back end. Now, Emmanuel Moseley faces his nemesis this week in DeAndre Hopkins, who just torched him for the Arizona Cardinals in week 1 of 2020. So another test awaits. But again, the 49ers are going to enter this game with the same philosophy that they've had throughout this Lynch-Shanahan era, especially since 2019, and that is rush over coverage. It's going to be up to Bosa. It's going to be up to Ford. It's going to be up to Armstead. It's going to be up to guys like Ebukam to come at Kyler Murray in waves, because if they can do that, if the 49ers can collapse that inside too with Kinlaw and whoever else, DJ Jones, whoever else is rushing on the inside, then that back end is going to look a lot better. And then you'll see how does Moseley do against DeAndre Hopkins? How does Dante Johnson do at that slot cornerback position against the Arizona Cardinals? And how does Drake Kirkpatrick do against a team that he used to play for? So it's not a perfect 49ers defense, but I think you saw the formula. And the formula against the Seahawks will work if the offense gives them some help. And obviously if this health situation stays reasonable right now. Joey Sly, as we move to special teams, is the 49ers' new kicker. 4 out of 5 field goals made for Houston this year. Robbie Gould may or may not go to IR. We'll see. If the 49ers need a roster spot, they can make that move. But you also have Mitch Wishnowsky back in exclusively at the position that he's really good at, punter. He was NFC Special Teams Player of the Month for September. Don't want to see him kicking field goals or extra points anymore. And Tabor Pepper is your long snapper. I don't know what Joey Sly is going to look like. I know he has a strong leg. Maybe he's going to handle kickoffs as well. As far as kickoff returns, maybe the 49ers claim Simba Webster off of waivers from the Bears. Trenton Cannon certainly had a bad game this past week against Seattle. So we'll see if the 49ers make any changes as a kick returner, especially with one of their preseason players available. But Joey Sly is going to be a new kicker, and the 49ers sure hope that he fares better than Chase McLaughlin did in overtime against the Seattle Seahawks back in 2019. Now, remember, there wouldn't have been overtime had Chase McLaughlin, the 49ers backup kicker, not forced it with his 47-yard field goal. He then missed a 47-yarder in OT. So he was 1 for 2 in that game, but 49ers fans only seem to remember the second one. Still, 49ers hope that if there are 2 field goal tries for a backup kicker against Arizona, that Joey Sly makes both of them. Anyway, let's look at the 49ers roster. We'll take one comment. I still have Lombardi. Will be right back down there. I should have taken that off. You have to force Murray to stay in the pocket. If you let him roll out, game over. That means a lot of contain for the defensive end, and the 49ers will need to try to get pressure up the middle. Absolutely. I think that's really an echo of what I said. You're going to have Dee Ford and Nick Bosa and Armstead, who has struggled with that in the past, rush in a disciplined manner. And you're going to have those inside guys win. It's going to take another great effort from the defensive line. And, this is how the defensive line for the 49ers is a Ferrari. We've seen the talent overpower teams. In 2019, it might have been more consistent. I get it. But we saw it in a 5-possession spurt against Arizona. And 5 possessions is not a short amount of time against Seattle. For 5 possessions, they were overpowering. That Ferrari then ran out of gas, right? They weren't nearly as overpowering after that. You fuel the Ferrari, you hook it up to the gas station by playing good complementary offense. That's how offense can feed defense, and then defense obviously can feed offense, and that's what complementary football is all about. So what Brandon said there is what the 49ers defensive line has to do against Murray. That will help play complementary football with the secondary because rush and coverage are connected. Emmanuel Moseley, who's been really physical this year, can benefit from that. And then on the other side of the ball, that combined defensive product can help the 49ers offense. And, I can't get into too much detail about that because I don't know if it's going to be Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. Or, in an ideal world, I think the 49ers start Jimmy, play Trey, and make the most efficient offense possible. But either way, they need to become the most efficient team possible. And because we don't know those exact details yet, we'll come back with our Cardinals preview in a couple days. All right, everybody, follow the YouTube channel. More in-depth discussions and breakdowns of the 49ers, just like this one. And follow me on Twitter at Lombardi himself. We'll talk to you all next time. Take care.